Welcome, everyone. Today we're doing a deep dive into a book that, well, it's been shaping how people interact since the Great Depression.
You're talking about Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People, right? Published way back in 1936.
Exactly. And, it's not some dusty old relic sitting on a shelf. We're talking 30 million copies sold.
Yeah, and even someone like Warren Buffett says it was crucial for him. He actually took the course when he was only, what, 20?
Just 20 years old. Incredible. So I guess the big question for us today is, does advice from the era of Model T Fords and radio dramas still work?
Does it hold up now in the age of TikTok and remote teams? That's what we need to unpack.
Right. Because Carnegie's core idea, which was pretty revolutionary back then, seems simple on the surface.
What was that again?
That humans are fundamentally emotional. We're driven by pride, by this deep need to feel important, often, more than just by logic.
Oh, okay. And he argued that success, whether in business or just relationships, it really boils down to understanding that basic human psychology.
Yeah, and he laid it out like a practical manual. So let's start there. Part one, handling people. What was his first big rule?
Okay. His first commandment, as he sort of puts it, is don't criticize, condemn, or complain.
Don't criticize, condemn, or complain. Why not?
Because, as Carnegie saw it, criticism directly uh, wounds a person's precious pride, hurts his sense of importance, and arouses resentment. It just puts people's backs up immediately.
That makes sense intuitively. But, today, feedback culture is huge. Sometimes it feels like brutal honesty is the norm.
Right.
So how do you apply that? I mean, are you just supposed to ignore problems, or is there more to it?
There's definitely more nuance. He wasn't saying, let everything slide. It's about the approach.
Okay.
So if direct criticism is out, his alternative is powerful.
Hmm.
Offer honest and sincere appreciation.
Honest and sincere, that's the key part, I guess.
Exactly. He saw appreciation as a fundamental human need, like food or sleep. But it's a need that's rarely met for most people.
A deep hunger, he called it.
Yeah. And think about work, for instance. How often do people genuinely feel appreciated for their effort, not just judged on the results? It's rare.
That really reframes it, doesn't it? So, okay, if you're focused on genuine appreciation, how does that connect to his next big idea? Something about arising an eager want.
Yes, arouse in the other person an eager want.
How do you even figure out what someone's eager want is? Especially if they're not exactly shouting it from the rooftops.
Well, it takes skill, right?
Hmm.
Carnegie uses this great analogy about fishing.
Oh, yeah.
You wouldn't bait your hook with cheesecake just because you love cheesecake.
Uh-huh. No, probably not.
You use worms, because that's what the fish wants. It's about catering to them, not you.
So how do you find their worms?
It means really listening,
Hmm.
paying attention, asking good questions to understand their goals, their problems, their dreams, not just pushing your own agenda. You have to step into their world.
Okay, so if you're doing that, really focusing on them, that seems to lead right into his next section, making people like you.
It does flow naturally.
He lists those classic techniques. Be genuinely interested, like really interested. Smile. Remember names.
Which he called the sweetest sound to anyone's ears.
Right. Be a good listener, get them talking about themselves, talk about their interests, make them feel important, sincerely.
Yeah, a whole toolkit there.
Of all those, which one do you think gets missed the most today? In our, super distracted world.
Oh, easily being a good listener. And genuinely encouraging people to talk about themselves.
We're always just waiting to jump in, aren't we?
So often, yeah. There's this anecdote about a therapist who tried these principles. She found that in one conversation, she barely said anything.
Mm-hmm.
And the other person thought it was a fantastic conversation.
Right.
Why? Because they felt truly heard.
Wow.
It just shows that real listening, being present, it's a powerful way to make someone feel valued, which goes back to that core need for importance.
Okay, now this next part is where I sometimes get stuck. Winning people to your thinking.
Ah, yes, the persuasion section.
Carnegie famously says, the only way to get the best of an argument is to avoid it. But honestly, how is that even realistic? We live in a world full of debate.
Right. It sounds almost passive, doesn't it?
Yeah. Are you just supposed to roll over? Or is he talking about something else?
It's definitely about reframing.
Oh.
He's not saying avoid tough topics. He's saying avoid the fight, the confrontation.
Okay.
Because even if you technically win an argument, you've probably hurt the other person's pride. You've created resentment. You haven't really won them over.
So what's the alternative then?
His strategies are all about collaboration, not combat. Show respect for their opinions even if you disagree. Admit your own mistakes quickly if you've made any.
That takes humility.
It does. Start friendly. Get them saying yes to small things early on. Let them do most of the talking. And crucially, let them feel the idea is partly theirs.
So it's less about forcing your view and more about guiding.
Exactly. Guiding them to the conclusion, making it a joint discovery. It's shifting from trying to conquer them to collaborating with them.
That sounds much more productive. Okay, and the last main section. Leading and changing people. How does he suggest doing that effectively?
Well, his principles here are really built on positive reinforcement and what we'd now call psychological safety.
How so?
He advises things like, start with praise and honest appreciation. If you have to point out a mistake, do it indirectly.
Indirectly. How?
Maybe by talking about your own similar mistakes first. It softens the blow. Ask questions instead of barking orders.
Let people save face. That seems important.
Hugely important. And praise every little bit of improvement. The overall goal, he says, is to make the fault seem easy to correct.
So foster growth, not fear or shame.
Precisely. It's about building confidence, making change feel possible, not like a punishment. Less correction, more cultivation.
Okay, that covers the core principles.
Yeah.
But we have to talk about the criticisms, the sort of elephant in the room.
Absolutely. It's a common reaction.
A lot of people read Carnegie and just cringe. They feel the methods are manipulative or just plain inauthentic.
Yeah, the faking it accusation.
Right, or that it encourages you to suppress your own feelings, just constantly validating others, creating these really one-sided relationships.
That's a big one. And some of the anecdotes, the ones about factory workers being amazed that an executive knew their name.
They feel a bit dated, maybe even a little classist.
They could definitely come across that way now, yeah. And maybe the biggest concern is that the book doesn't leave much space for a healthy conflict or for expressing your own needs.
Like it's a recipe for becoming a doormat if you're not careful.
Potentially, if you apply it without balance, yes.
So how do people defend Carnegie against these charges, especially the manipulation one? What's the argument for sincerity?
Well, defenders, and this includes modern therapists who actually use some of these ideas, they argue the core message is really about empathy. Genuine empathy.
Not just tactics.
Not just tactics. Carnegie himself warned against insincere flattery. He stressed honest and sincere appreciation that comes from the heart.
So there's a difference between flattery and appreciation.
A huge difference. Flattery is self-serving, saying whatever you think someone wants to hear to get your way. Appreciation is other-focused, genuinely seeing and valuing something positive in them.
It's an internal shift then.
Exactly. And his call to see things from their perspective, to prioritize their feeling of importance, you could argue that's just radical empathy in practice.
Any examples of that?
Well, remember that therapist I mentioned, the one experimenting with the book?
Yeah.
She found that applying the no criticism rule actually shifted her focus. She started naturally looking for the positive in people, and it improved her own outlook, not just her interactions.
Interesting. So it changed her, too.
Right. And Carnegie himself said, the principles taught in this book will work only when they come from the heart. I am talking about a new way of life. It's meant to be a philosophy, not just tricks.
Okay, seeing it as a philosophy of interaction rather than just a playbook definitely changes things. Which brings us to the big question.
Is it still relevant in 2025?
Yeah. For me, honestly, it's a resounding yes, but with some important caveats.
I'd agree with that.
Its real strength, I think, is reminding us of those fundamental human needs. Feeling valued, feeling heard, feeling important.
Absolutely. In a world that's so full of digital noise and, frankly, self-absorption, these basics are maybe more vital than ever.
Things like active listening, remembering a name, showing real appreciation, trying to see the other side in a disagreement instead of just attacking. That stuff is gold.
It really is foundational. But the caveats are important, too. It's not, the complete guide to modern relationships.
Definitely not. Carnegie's world didn't emphasize things like emotional vulnerability or setting boundaries or the kind of mutual self-expression we expect in really deep friendships or partnerships today.
True. The book is fantastic for building basic social skills, for persuasion, for navigating professional interactions, for diffusing conflict.
It gives you powerful tools for rapport and influence.
Exactly. But it shouldn't replace that authentic connection where both people feel fully seen and heard.
So the advice might be, use Carnegie as a powerful guide for those initial connections, for smoothing professional life, for handling disagreements constructively.
But remember to bring your whole, authentic self to your deeper relationships. It's about balance.
Balancing these techniques with the courage to also express your own needs, your own perspective when it's appropriate.
Yeah, it helps you understand others better, which is key. But true connection needs that two-way street.
Ultimately, Carnegie's genius, I think, was spotting that simple truth. The only way on earth to influence other people is to talk about what they want and show them how to get it.
And if you can do that authentically,
You've got a powerful key for better relationships, better work life, pretty much everything. It's really no surprise this book is almost 90 years old and still a cornerstone.
truly remarkable.
So now we want to turn it over to you listening. Have you read How to Win Friends? What was your take? Did the techniques feel sincere to you, or did they feel manipulative?
And how have they actually worked or maybe not worked in your life today? We'd love to know.
Definitely. Until our next deep dive, keep turning those pages and keep connecting meaningfully.